Enticed by neon gas flowing through sculpted glass tubes and flickering lights racing along with rapidity, we're compelled to this corner along Texas Avenue, where dusty westerns galloped into the sunset. Sci-fis pushed futurism, horror flicks lurked in the shadows, and classics made our hearts sing. All manner of dramas played out in front of our eyes. We sat there mesmerized in the hushed darkness together. As the seasons slip away, these memories grow dimmer and yet more cherished. This place was the Brunson. This place was our friend.
The Brunson Theater has always been important to Baytown since it opened. Compared to today's theaters, it was more personal, in my opinion. You know, people were drawn to it to watch this movie experience and to enjoy themselves.
It was our place to go for entertainment back then in Baytown.
We would go just as a family, and it was a big deal.
For me, the Brunson Theater was just a magical experience, a magical place to go. Probably one of the highlights of my first decade of life.
It's just an iconic building and just really an iconic venue of bringing together all walks of life.
I love movies. I loved going to the Brunson as a child. In college, I actually worked there one summer before it closed. It's just a big part of my life.
The people that were working there made you feel welcome, so they were excited that you even came.
It was a beautiful place to work, very clean. Everybody was very cordial.
I thought, wow, I can go into a movie theater. I go into the Brunson from my little house in Baytown, and suddenly I'm in England with this amazing things and the magic of it. When the lights go down,
I would see my friends, I would meet new friends. We'd watch a movie together, we'd laugh together, and sometimes we'd cry together.
it just takes you back to the experience of theater from the Greeks on. It's all, I mean, I think the Brunson versus the Greek theater, I mean, there is a real kind of constant line between the two of them.
The best way I can describe Texas Avenue back then was American graffiti.
When I was in high school, we used to drive up and down Texas Avenue for hours.
We always knew that's what we were going to do for the weekend, whether we were getting in somebody's car and cruising Texas Avenue, which basically meant going around in a circle for 4 blocks and then seeing the same cars over and over again.
Its heyday was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Texas Avenue was bustling at that time. There was so much going on, teenagers out in their cars, here I am, a little kid thinking that's what I want to be someday, whether they were hoodlums or not, it didn't matter. I was excited about that.
I remember on Friday and Saturday nights when I was going out and my dad told me to be careful and he'd tell me, you stay off Texas Avenue. That's just a gauge of how cool the place was back in the day.
Every store imaginable in Baytown was on Texas Avenue.
Tri-City Cafe, Moore's Shoe Store.
Wig shops, radio shops, loan shops, all that kind of stuff. It was where the town shopped and socialized.
Sears, J.C. Penney's, all the department stores.
Back in those days, you had Cress's, which was across the street.
It was solid shoe stores, department stores, clothing stores, gift stores.
Everything you could do was here. You had the drug stores, you had your banks, you had your trophy barbershop where I got my hair cut here all the time, still do today. On one end of Texas Avenue, you got the iconic oak tree at the other end, and then right in the heart, right in the center of it, is the Brunson Theater.
Howard Brunson came to Baytown in 1924. His first theater was the Palace Theater in West Baytown. But he was also responsible for the Decker Drive-In, the Sanja in Channelview, the Bellevue in Mont Bellevue, the Port Theater in LaPorte, and as well as the Brunson Theater.
Howard E. Brunson opened the theater in 1949. That was his 8th theater, and he was quite the theater tycoon at the time.
My father, Howard Brunson, loved movies. That's why he went to the theater business, and he loved getting to know people and what made them tick. Years and years back, movie stars used to travel throughout the nation to promote their movies. And so often, when they would come to the Brunson, they would actually go to my parents' home for dinner. My mother was a wonderful cook and hostess.
He understood the theater business and what it took to bring people into shows. Mr. Brunson's charitable efforts never ceased across the cities where he worked. He's a deeply devout man, and his theaters, they left a mark on tens of thousands through the years.
Of all the theaters that Daddy owned, the Brunson Theater was the flagship, the jewel.
Art Deco theaters started in the 1920s. The theaters were very ornate. They were generally called movie palaces. But after the Great Depression, all the crystal chandeliers and marble columns were stripped away, and we were left with the streamlined theaters called Art Deco. The Brunson Theater was built for about $100,000 in 1949. Being after the war, technically, it's not really Art Deco. We call it Deco Echo. As you approach the Brunson Theater, you immediately notice the 50-foot upright sign emblazoned with the Brunson name and topped by the Tri-Cities symbol. The Brunson has two very significant Art Deco design features. First is the beautiful box office, and most significant of all, 6 concrete relief panels designed by Rudolf Wagner. These represent the industries of Baytown. The theater's marquee was a brilliantly lighted V-shaped design, and it was illuminated by colorful rose, green, and red neon tubing. The underside was solid white in a modern design.
The Art Deco style, it just invited you in. It said, come in.
The Brunson, when you walked into it, was kind of breathtaking. The interior was so gorgeously well planned and well done. The ceiling and the lighting in the ceiling complemented the floor, and the floor complemented the ceiling. It's kind of like a palace.
As you enter the Brunson Theater main foyer, you notice immediately the circular settee, originally finished in green leather and topped by fresh floral displays. The center point of the theater's foyer was what they called on opening day the confectionery. We would know it as candy counter. The Brunson's candy counter was indeed fancy. It featured decorative scrollwork at both ends and beautiful illuminated shelving. The interior of the theater's auditorium was finished with acoustic plaster. The seats themselves were very high-tech, luxurious Krahler pushback seats, and they were the last word in seating. Theaters like the Brunson were built all over the United States, and they were very active community centers in every small town across America.
Hi, I'm Chili Dilly, the personality pickle. Packed in a jar for the freshest flavor. Served cold in a sack for you to savor. A real Chili Dilly.
As soon as you get your ticket, we walk in, the very first thing you see is that concession stand. You know, just right there to your right, all lit up, every kind of candy.
As a kid, seeing the candy there, you know, it was just like, wow.
To me as a kid, it seemed like hundreds of candies and other confections that were just lined up so perfectly in neat rows.
It was so large, it had everything a little kid could want. Every kind of candy, sodas, whatever.
I can always remember the smell of the hot dogs. That was the big deal, the smell of the hot dogs and seeing the little rotisserie broiler going.
My first choice was always Jordan almonds. Those little round almonds that were candy coated. I would just get so excited because I knew as soon as I had my box, I was ready to go in and open it up and get ready to watch the movie with my candy.
We had 3 drinks. I'm thinking it was orange juice, but it might have been orangeade. who had Coke and lemonade.
So another thing I remember about the concession stand was this huge pickle jar.
Of course, pickles on the counter, and
they had these huge container that had the dill pickles in it. Remember it so distinctly.
In that big pickle jar, there was a lot of juice left over, and Mr. Honeycutt wondered, well, you know, it's such a waste to throw away all this juice. You know, what could I do with it? And so he decided to sell it.
They would hand it to you in this little white paper snow cone cup, basically, with a scoop of ice, and just pour that pickle juice over it. Your mouth would start watering before they even handed it over.
And we get the dill pickles, and it's kind of weird, but I'd put peppermint stick in the middle. Yeah, so sad. But a peppermint stick in the middle of the pickle.
I do not like pickles, but the Brunson was known for pickles.
I still love my pickle juice today. Pickle juice and Coke is really good. My grandfather, Rufus Honeycutt, one thing he did love was the decorating of the candy counter.
so he would dress up for the seasons, Christmas, Easter, even the spaceship. I think he actually did it for Apollo when they landed on the moon, that he had the different things in the counter.
He'd have it set up as space theme. I mean, sometimes it was out of this world.
It was decorated by a professional, and they would change it seasonal.
Going up to that counter, you always remember as a kid, you didn't put your fingers on the counter because that was fingerprints.
You didn't touch the glass, and you wiped on the glass every time the lobby was empty. The glass got wiped off. If you could have seen the original counter, you would have understood it. It looked like a diamond, really gorgeous, because it was beveled cut. I had never seen a bevel. At my home, just had the plain cut mirror. Cheap, you know. There wasn't nothing cheap about the Brunson.
Of course, one of the most iconic movie history moments in Baytown is 1968, the Hellfighters movie. With Jim Hutton, Catherine Ross, and yes, the Duke, John Wayne.
With these wells out in the bay, that's attracted the movie production, and in the background, they set up a drilling rig there on the peninsula of the edge of Goose Creek and literally burned it down.
Everyone came out to 146 lined with cars as far as you could see to watch them film the movie over in Tabbs Bay. Of course, the movie's based on Red Adair and Boots and Coots and all that. It's just an iconic group at that time already. And here comes John Wayne. And John Wayne could have been nicer to everybody in Baytown. He signed autographs, he took pictures.
I took my mother probably about 4 and 5 times a day, trying to catch John Wayne or his stuntman. What was crazy about the stuntman was John Wayne. Well, we were always there, wrong time, wrong place.
One of the movie stars in the movie was Catherine Ross, and so we got to visit with her, and I was fortunate enough to get a picture made with her.
I had some friends who went out there, kind of looked around and saw what the crews were wearing, so they went and got some orange jumpsuits, put them on, and went out there, kind of blended in with the crew and just walked around the set.
It was interesting to me that Jim Hutton was not nearly as friendly as John Wayne was, and it was boring for them to sit around for hours at a time waiting for a 5-minute shoot. So Jim Hutton was kind of dozing, napping off, and this young man went over and asked him if he could get his picture made with him, and instead of answering him, he just kind of rolled over, and John Wayne took his boot and punched him real good and said, you need to get up and get your picture made with this young man.
A few scenes of the movie was filmed at the Palms Motel, which opened in 1954. There's a couple of shots of actor Jim Hutton and actress Catherine Ross in the scene. Catherine's driving her convertible ragtop Cadillac out of the parking lot. It's pretty cool.
They took some of the part of the drilling rig after they had burned it down, moved it over across the bay into an area of pine trees, and they wanted to make it look like it was in South America, so they built a levee and flooded an area, and then they cut the limbs off the pine trees and put palm limbs on them, so it looked like you were in South America.
So when the movie was done and there's time for the big show in December of that year, they're gonna have their premiere. Baytown was really hoping to get opportunity to have that premiere, and they did.
One of the actresses, B.B. Louie, was popular at that time, and she came to the premiere. It was a big event for Baytown.
You have B.B. Louie, who was in the movie. You have some of the directors and special effects coordinators. They're all here for about a week, spent a lot of time in Baytown, went to dinners. I think B.B. even celebrated her birthday here.
When I was little, my father drove past the Brunson when they had the opening. It was a mob scene.
And then they had the premiere right here at the Brunson Theater. What a great moment for that theater.
It's here at last, the monumental history-making motion picture, 14 years in the making, the $12 million epic, The Alamo. Starring John Wayne as Colonel David Crockett.
Rufus Honeycutt, Brunson Theater, Baytown, Texas. The heroes of the Alamo have made this Texas Independence Day a cherished memory.
A lot of people don't know John Wayne sent to the Brunson a Western Union telegram thanking them for showing the Alamo on Independence Day.
Remember the Alamo, John Wayne.
It was just a super entertaining film, and it was packed that night.
And you will always remember the Alamo.
So one of my all-time favorite memories of the Brunson was seeing the iconic Star Wars. I'll never forget, it goes dark in the theater, the screen isn't dark, now all of a sudden you're in space. And then the words start to scroll, and you really feel like, as large as the Brunson was, especially in a 7-year-old's eyes, you really felt there.
Those words coming across the screen, trying to read everything in a galaxy far, far away.
My brother and I saw Star Wars at the Brunson. It was very exciting, very uplifting.
One of my cousins, Roy, became obsessed with Star Wars when it came out. He would show up in the morning for the first showing and just kind of hide. It was upstairs in the upstairs theater, so it was easy to kind of sneak around up there. And he would hide out and watch the show over and over and over again and just live off of pickle juice and popcorn the whole day.
I've met Chewbacca, both robots. It's a great film.
The first movie I remember seeing at the Brunson was The Creature from the Black Lagoon. I was about 6.5 years old, and I went with my older sister. She put me in the seats, and then she went off with her friends. And when the creature came walking up out of the lagoon, it scared me so much. I started bawling and running up the aisle, went out all the way outside on Texas Avenue, and went into a little courtyard between the bank and the theater, and a friend of her family found me there and said, "What are you doing here?" And she got me back in the theater to my sister.
Patton. He was bigger than life. I was so patriotic. You can't believe how patriotic I am. Very patriotic. When Patton came on that giant screen with that giant American flag, I jumped up out of my seat, screamed and applauded. I wanted to join the Army that day.
The one that really sticks in my mind is probably Orca from 1977 or 78. Right after Jaws came out, they're going to go on that the Jaws kick, and we saw Orca, and seeing Orca knock down a house slide to the water, biting off a leg, and the blood on the water, that'll stick with you when you're 7 years old.
As a teenager, I read all the James Bond books, so I was really wanting to see the James Bond movies. So I went to the very first one at the Brunson to see Dr. No. And there was Sean Connery, the first James Bond, the best James Bond. He was hiding behind the dunes, and he hears something out on the waves of the Caribbean, and he looks up, and there's Ursula Andress coming up over the dunes in her white bikini. And unlike the creature from the Black Lagoon, she didn't make me cry. She brought other feelings out.
So when I think of the Brunson, I really think Disney movies in the 70s, and they're so iconic at that time. I think the one that really sticks out in my mind, because still today I love these kind of movies, was Gus. Now, you may not put Gus as a sports genre, but you have a field goal kicking mule. It doesn't get any better.
I do remember seeing Old Yeller, and Old Yeller was a great movie. My sister remembers that first time she went and saw it, that it was so crowded in the Brunson, she sat up in the balcony, had to sit on the steps.
Old Yeller, Old Yeller, Old Yeller.
And of course, when Old Yeller dies, that place was just silent with the crying. What a great experience.
In 1976, when Rocky came out, we took my grandmother. She got so invested in the characters and so invested in the story that by the time he got to the fight scene with Apollo Creed, she was sitting literally at the edge of her seat. She started punching. Hit him! Hit him! Hit him! It was hilarious. It's something my sisters and I, a side of her we'd never seen before, and something we'll never forget.
I saw a movie called The Doberman Gang. A group of thieves trained Dobermans to go into banks and take the money. I was so impressed with Dobermans, I wanted my father to get me a Doberman, but he never did. I guess we're kind of cat people.
I guess I keep coming back to Robin Hood. Just the magic of that has never left me. And I must have been 12 when I saw it.
Welcome to Sherwood, my lady.
And once I started doing this, I thought if I could ever bring that much joy to someone that was brought to me by that film, I would do it.
I have a great passion for horror films. I've seen The Pit and the Pendulum, The Raven, Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, The Horror of Dracula, Dracula 1972, The Mummy, Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, The Horror of Frankenstein, Boris Karloff, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, they're my heroes.
I saw Giant here on the Brunson, and bum 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 bum. This is the Giant, Lone Star State, the Giant. This is the Giant, land I love. Elizabeth Taylor is fantastic, and Rock Hudson, I don't think he's ever acted in a movie except for this one. He was great. James Dean, that acting he did when he serves Elizabeth Taylor tea. And again, you can only see this in the film. It stuck with, he's trying to serve Elizabeth Taylor tea in his little shack where he's drilling for oil, and she doesn't want to stay, he doesn't do it right, he's so nervous, and he declares his love for her. She just, gotta go, she leaves. And as she's leaving, he looks down where her beautiful little tiny footprint is in the mud, and it fills with oil. I mean, that's just, that film about Texas and that film about just oil and, sort of the Shamrock Hotel in Houston and all those things, and it was huge.
I do remember seeing Jaws there. That was a big deal.
Jaws, out of the water.
Jaws was kind of like the first big summer blockbuster. Lots of people, just went to see the movie continuously, and it grew over the summer.
Come on in the water!
pretty scary movie and lots of action.
I like the big screen.
I'm a huge Beatles fan. I saw them in August 19th, 1965 at the Sam Houston Coliseum. It was pure chaos, screaming girls, just like you see on television. So then when Hard Day's Night came out, I naturally had to go to the movie, and I know I saw it 6 times at the Brunson. The first time I went, I just stayed and watched it twice, 2 times in a row, because I was so mesmerized by everything going on in the movie. It seemed to be such an accurate portrayal of their lives. Watching that movie really put me in their world, and it just showed you kind of behind the scenes of their day-to-day life, what it was like to be a Beatle.
My grandfather's Rufus Honeycutt. He started out at Seguin as a projectionist in the movie industry. Then he came to Baytown, Goose Creek, where he met Mr. Brunson, and they became really good friends.
He was at the Bay Theater in 1945, and Mr. Brunson hand chose him to manage the Brunson Theater.
He was very good because he was so friendly and welcoming.
Always a showman, always fun to be around. Yeah. A jokester.
Rufus Honeycutt, the P.T. Barnum of Baytown, Texas. The ideas that this guy came up with to promote the Brunson were legendary.
He would do promotions for a scary movie where he actually gave away a funeral.
They were going to give away a live baby. This was the kind of promotion that B movies did in the 50s and the 60s.
Mr. Honeycutt made up a dummy and had him to hang off of the theater. Now, he got in a little trouble about that.
We had a gorilla suit that they used at the Brunson Theater, and sometimes they'd get somebody, one of us or somebody else, to wear it for the different promotions.
He hired an airplane pilot and gave him 100,000 cards with the flyers for the Brunson. Well, the wind changed direction, and all of the flyers went into Tabbs Bay. And I love this, as Mr. Honeycutt said, and not a single fish showed up to the show.
And he might have been called crazy and insane, but he drew people to the theater.
He was even featured in Variety magazine in 1956.
And he always wanted to do the next prank, you know.
Some referred to Mr. Honeycutt as the Baytown babysitter. Mothers would drop off the kids at the Brunson and they would go shop Texas Avenue. And Mr. Honeycutt would watch the kids as they watched the movies.
Who can say that they had a couple of hundred kids to take care of every Saturday for 30 or 40 years and loved every bit of it? I can tell you today, I really miss him.
The Brunson Theater had legitimate ushers, and they were probably actually only about 5 years older than us. They were just young teenagers themselves, but we were 8 or 9 years old, and we were a little bit afraid of them.
Our ushers wore uniforms. They were kind of militant, but they held themselves like little toy soldiers or something.
It was kind of a maroon or maroonish red kind of vest, and they had the hat. The little hat would come out, and Mr. Honeycutt was pretty strict. That was one thing. If you misbehaved in the theater, your parents were going to know about it.
They would walk up and down the aisles with their flashlights, and if they heard you talking too much or giggling or throwing spitballs, they would ask you to step up, come out, and go see Mr. Honeycutt.
But it was funny, and I remember I had a friend of mine that became an usher, and he was talking about how hard Mr. Honeycutt was on him, that he was not, he was like, listen, this is your job.
Even Rufus Honeycutt Jr. was one of the ushers and would dress up in his uniform, look very official, very important, so we were very respectful of him.
Of course, one of the biggest memories is the kiddie shows. We all went to the kiddie shows.
Every Saturday was kiddie show time.
Everybody came to Baytown, dropped their kids off at the kiddie show on Saturday morning. The line would be totally out the door.
They'd show 3 cartoons and then a feature film.
I remember, Hopalong Cassidy, Lash LaRue, Lone Ranger, Zorro.
Get to see Tom and Jerry, Cat in the Hat.
The Three Stooges cartoons and the Laurel and Hardy, as a very young kid, that was good stuff.
A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a cry of, "Hi-ho, silver, away!"
That was good stuff. We'd come there for that.
And then they'd have a dance contest, musical chairs.
But they had the beauty queens. They had the hula hoops.
We learned to play musical chairs, dance contests. My brother was the greatest. He won quite often.
Oh, the sack racing, where you're in a tow sack. They had the frogs.
You have to have the right hip to move the other kids out of the chair. So of course I'd win. I'd make sure of it.
You brought your frog, and you could use the stick to prompt him to come across the stage.
With my dad's business just being one store over, when kids got a kiddie show, they had to call their parents to come get them. So it was not unusual that at Saturday about noon, there would be about 50 kids in line wanting to use the phone at Texas State Optical because they needed to call their parents to come pick them up.
Return with us to those thrilling days of yesteryear, the Lone Ranger rides again. And that's what this is all about, those thrilling days of yesteryear, which we shared in the Brunson Theater.
So one of my favorite stories was from the Baytown Sun back in 1974 when they had 11 employees at that time, all teenagers. 10 of them were from Robert E. Lee, the Ganders. 1 of them was from Baytown Sterling, the Rangers. And of course, the story goes, we had one Lone Ranger working at the Brunson.
A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty hi-yo silver.
Always gotta get those movie plugs in there.
My love of movies goes back to the Brunson. I mean, those magical Saturday mornings with this Hopalong Cassidy and Zorro and the Lone Ranger. And I lived in Lakewood, and I would go across the street and watch the ships going down the ship channel. And I'm wondering, well, gosh, where are they going? Straits of Malacca, Singapore, whatever. And at the same time, I would come to the Brunson Theater, and there I would actually be transported to all these different magical worlds. And so if you grow up in a place, any place, it could be Baytown, it could be someplace in England, Russia, Africa, there's something about the first experiences that take you out of your own just small experience and lets you feel like there's a whole magical world out there, and particularly when you're young. And I think for me, the Brunson was the center where storytelling really made its imprint on my heart. And I really decided, over time that that's really what I wanted to do. I saw Lawrence of Arabia at the Brunson. And again, that's another sense of like those ships is that, oh my God, there's a place like that? A desert? And you're in Baytown and you go out and you're wet and mosquitoes and it's muddy and there's nothing taller than like 20 feet in town, and there's mountains and deserts, and I didn't know what to think. I had to go be by myself. I dropped my date off and just went out to the boat ramp, out in Lakewood, and just watched the ships go by. And it was I couldn't imagine, because this was a guy, he was supposed to be the hero, right? But look at what he did. And so you get that ambivalence about life and about how people can be both good and evil. They're not just good or evil. And there's a marvelous scene, and he's sitting there all night long, and the 2 boys that follow him are sitting above him on the dunes, and he can't think, and one of them knocks a rock off, and the rock rolls down and hits him from behind, and he looks.
Aqaba.
And then the next thing you know, they're going to attack Aqaba from the rear. That's where he got the idea. And to show that without any language is like, oh my God, it's moving pictures. Yeah, you just grew up at the Brunson. I never thought I'd be writing movies, but those things grow out of who we are. And we don't know the things that are going to be important or that are going to be formative or that are going to actually make us who we become. It's a mystery. And the Brunson, now that I think about it, is like the real center of that. I feel like it was the place of magic for me.
So in 1981, when San Jacinto Mall was built, to me, that kind of really was the death knell for the Brunson. You know, you have a Cinema 6, you have 6 theaters now out there, and for the Brunson, it was just hard to compete. And unfortunately, that began to take away not only the Brunson's draw, but eventually, of course, Texas Avenue as well.
All those years that it sat there, there were many, many times people talked about bringing it back, but it was just never really there. And I remember signs on the marquee saying, "Save me," you know, "Save me." And I always felt like that we needed to do that. It's just a big part of Baytown. When a city loses its heart, it's not the same.
So much of the history of Baytown is tied to Texas Avenue and the Brunson Theater that it's really important for us to keep that as part of our heritage.
It's really connecting back to our roots, our history, where things began, where our entertainment and culture really started in the city.
Well, I grew up, as most everybody did in Baytown, with the Brunson Theater. It's a symbol that lives in people, and I'm glad to see it being rejuvenated.
My grandfather, Rufus Honeycutt, I really think he'd really be proud of what the city of Baytown's doing for the Brunson Theater.
Sometimes when we would go to trainers after the movie and nothing would happen, and things were dying down and come back down and all the lights were off on Main Street except a few lamps, and the Brunson light would still be on, and every now and then you could see the Brunson light go off. And when the Brunson light went off, it was like the whole life had been sucked out of the town, and sleep was coming on and night was falling. And to be able to see it lit up again, I mean, that's a huge thrill, because it says something about our town.
For every life has a place it holds sacred. In this coastal hamlet, perched along brackish bays, was a picture house that shined a bit brighter, laughed a bit harder, touched us all deeper than we really knew. When the lights went down, and that magnificent screen flickered alive, this was the uncommon gift that Brunson gave to us all. And we would never be the same again.
Texas Ave again, a familiar sound that's electric in the wind. People gather round, just waiting to get in on a Friday night. We're just playing pretend, so take me out before you take me home. I don't wanna be all alone. Those summer nights under neon glow, I'm still waiting for you after the show. It's a little town where ships pass through the night. You can leave it here, but the memories still ignite. silver screen. So take me out, for you take me home. I don't wanna be all alone. Those summer nights under neon glow, I'm still waiting for you after the show. I'm still waiting for you after the show.